All right, here we are. As I said last time, I promised we're going to do the tail end of the what level of thinking chapter. And one of the things it's nice to know things in theory, but you also want to know how to do things in application, how to get things done. So here's a game plan. As you begin to take your thinking seriously, think about what you can do consistently to improve your thinking, because excellent in thinking requires a variety of independent skills and traits working together. You can choose to work on a range of critical thinking skills at any given point in time. So, me personally, I was using it at all times of my life. If I read something on the internet, if I see a video, if I am out in public and something piques my interest, or if I'm going shopping for something as simple as groceries, or maybe for a car, or dozens of things. As I said before, this has a systemic application. And it's really just about thinking more clearly, accurately, thoroughly, specifically, logically, coherently, and so forth and so on. If you don't focus on fundamentals, you will never develop essential critical thinking skills for your development. It's like anything, right? I played sports. I played a lot of sports in high school, football, baseball, basketball. And it was always about strategy, and it was always about focusing and sometimes having to refocus, but always stay focused. In the critical thinking area, this is something it's a tool that you need. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. It's essential. It's primary. You got to have it, especially in a more complex, free world. If you are able to live in a country which allows you independence of thought, um, freedom of motion and action, and so forth, relatively speaking, then you want to be able to. This is an essential tool to be used at home, at work, in the community, wherever, however, right? So you gotta, and I was practicing this all the time, and I can tell you, it probably took at least 2, 3, if not more years to finally infringe upon expert thinking or high level thinking and critical thinking. Uh, Devising a game plan, we have put together a few ideas to stimulate your thought about a game plan. So these are just ideas, and many of these things I've done. Use wasted time. I was at the doctor's office. I'm waiting for a ride. I'm waiting for someone to appear. I'm going to pick someone up, and I've got some free time. I'm at home. I've got some free time. Instead of watching television, I'll do something critical thinking related. Okay. Anyway, some people fail to plan well, causing negative consequences that easily could have been avoided, such as spending time unnecessarily trapped in traffic. There's another one. You could have left an hour early. Well, I was trapped in traffic without much choice because I was at times as an adjunct professor going to colleges and universities that were some distance away, and I would bring CDs. Back in the day when there's CDs, or you can bring your phone and have recordings on your phone nowadays, or whatever, however you want to do it. I would listen to recordings about the economy. I would listen to recordings about finance, historical recordings, social recordings, political recordings, whatever. I think I learned most about what I know about the Constitution by listening to numerous recordings in my car. So I called it Car University, right? You have a lot of free time. Instead of turning a drive into frustration, turn it into a learning moments, right? Sometimes people worry unproductively, spend time regretting what is past, or just excuse me, or just stare blankly into space. A lot of us do that, and that's okay. I do that too, but you want to limit that. Frequently, people waste time on social media and playing mindless electronic games. Two things that I rarely do. I might be on social media on occasion, but I post and get off. I'm not there for hours surfing or debating with other people. If you're talking to other people on social media, the chance of converting or convincing someone is almost nil. You don't know these people. You're at a distance. You're at a disadvantage. You're just some stranger. You're just some random person on the internet, and most people will not give you much heed in that regard. Okay. People usually, generally, people of influence, things of influence people, not just some random post or comment or person on the internet. Right. Playing mindless electronic games. I used to do that. Used to. I played Doom. I had golf games. I had war games. I had build a city or build city games. But I stopped doing that relatively quickly. I realized that it was a waste of time, so I stopped doing it. It's not productive, right? You only have only so much time to live. Even if you live to be 100 years, doesn't matter. You've got eons where you're not here. So spend your time well, as they say. For example, instead of moving from website to website or burying yourself in unproductive social media interactions, spend the time, or at least part of it, thinking back over your day, evaluating your strengths and weaknesses. This is exactly what I used to do. And I used to do this before I read about this. Right? So a lot of this stuff, it will come to you. There's a book called Thick Face Black Card. And it's based in an ancient, probably 100-year-old plus Chinese theory on how to move forward successfully in one's life, how to solve problems, interact with people, and so forth. And I think I've already done videos on that, so you can check out the archives for that on my channel. But always doing something. I've read hundreds, probably 1,000 or more books by now. Do something productive. I can tell you, it really helps out. It helps you mentally, helps you feel better about yourself. You're not just spending endless hours, running in place. That's what you're doing when you're wasting your time, or just playing video games, or just surfing the net. Do something, right? Do something productive. When did I do these are the reflection questions. Questions are important. Anybody who advances asks questions, good questions, useful questions. When did I do my worst thinking today? When did I do my best thinking, actual thinking about today? What did I actually think about? Did I figure out anything? That's a good one. Did I allow any negative thinking, or to frustrate me unnecessarily? If I had to repeat today, what would I do differently, and why? Did I do anything today to further my long-term goal? That's a big one. Did I act in accordance with my own expressed values? That's something important too. People can really talk a talk, but can they walk the walk, right? There's a major difference between saying something or talking about something and actually doing that thing. I can tell you it's not easy. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert at that or I've mastered that, but anyways, taking a little time with each question is important. It would be useful to review these questions periodically, perhaps weekly, to write your answers in a journal. I used to keep a journal. I'm a writer. I stopped keeping a journal because I was writing all the time. I've written 400, 500, 600 articles. I've written poems and short stories and novels, fiction and nonfiction. That's writing. That's reflection, right? Anytime that you're thinking, pondering, contemplating, writing things down, that is going to usually end up in movement forward, right? Being progressive. It would be useful to review these questions periodically, weekly, to write your answers in a journal, and in so doing, keep a record of how your thinking is developing. Good. Handle a problem a day, at the beginning of the day, perhaps while driving work or school. Choose a problem to work on in your mind when you have free moments, right? Figure out the logic of the problem. Systematically think through these questions. What exactly is the problem? How can I put it into the form of questions? So it's difficult. It's not easy, but I can tell you, time is going to pass, and why waste your time being less productive? Spend your time, efforts doing something that will enable you to be more productive, right? For yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your community, for your state, your country, your nation, your world. I don't know. How far do you want to take it, right? Internalize intellectual standards. Each week, study and actively bring into your thinking one of the universal intellectual standards presented in chapter 5. Focus 1 week on clarity, next on accuracy, and so on. We'll get to that chapter, and you'll see that's another list. Remember the first chapter, our first list was about character traits. What type of character, personality, mindset does a good critical thinker need? And putting specific labels and terms to those elements, applicable elements, right, that will enable you to be a fair-minded thinker, a strong thinker, a better thinker, more thorough, accurate, comprehensive, logical, compassionate thinker, so forth and so on, right? I just used probably half the terms in that list right there, right? Keep an intellectual journal, right? Describe only situations emotionally significant to you, and that's key. I only have my students write about stuff that's significant to them. I don't say write about this or that. I say pick a significant moment or something of significance that you want to write about. And, you know, an important event in your life, or maybe an important something that happened socially that's important to you, or politically that's important to you, or whatever. Right? Describe only one situation at a time. Describe how you behaved in the situation, being specific and exact. A couple more things that I teach that most employers are looking for that a critical thinker should have, right? What did you say? What did you do? How did you react? There's a lot of, there's always things going on in the news, a lot of trying times. People talk about, oh, it's so bad now. It's been worse, okay? And it's also worse in many other countries right now, worse than what we've got, okay? So thinking that, you know, that's a limited perspective. That's a failed myopic perspective. Understand your place in history, understand the specifics and the details of what's going on. Don't just act emotionally, knee-jerk reflex emotion. And this is generally what people do. And if I agree with what is being said or what is being presented to me, then I will believe, I'll commit 100% to what is being said. But if that which I hear, I believe, not actually is, but I believe, opposes my way of thinking, and my way of thinking may be terrible. You know, people grow, people understand, you know, they think a particular way, and then several years later, they start to understand things better. They comprehend things better. They have more experience. They have more exposure to what's going on. They realize that their thinking was limited thinking. They think that they knew it all, or that their particular perspective or perspectives were the end all and the cure all. Generally, they're not, right? You got to be very open. You got to be very flexible. I guess that's a good one, right? And you can't get overly emotional or uptight or locked down or angry about things, right? There's only so much you can do, only so much you can control. So, you know, keep that in mind as well, right? Amongst all your other frustrations. Practice intellectual strategies. Choose a strategy from chapter 16 on strategic thinking. Again, we'll be getting to all of these chapters eventually. It's going to take quite some time, but we'll get there. Reshape your character each month. Choose one intellectual trait to strive for, focusing on how you can develop that trait in yourself. That book that I mentioned before, Thick Face Black Heart, there was a list of emotional characteristics, about 12, maybe about a dozen of them that were at the top of the list, that would generally bring people down, would cause problems in their lives, right? And I went through that list and I realized I had all of them when I was younger, in droves, right? And I hadn't seen this list before. Nobody told me to do this, but it was just logical, right? If you think logically, eventually you'll move in that direction in many ways, cases, and instances, right? So I read through that list and then I realized, geez, I got most of these under control. Probably 9 or 10 really under control, maybe 2 or 3 I'm still working on. So even being aware, I still had some work to do, and many, many, many years later, right? So not being aware and not working on them, you're asking for problems. You're heading for disaster. Notice when you refuse to admit you are wrong. There you go. That's huge. That's big. Notice when you become defensive when another person tries to point out a deficiency in your work or your thinking. Notice when your arrogance keeps you from learning, when you say to yourself, I already know everything I need to know about this subject. Sounds like some of my students. I know as much as he does. Who does he think he is forcing his opinions onto me, right? There are obviously some people, especially when I was younger and growing and learning more, there were a lot of people who just, they knew more than me. And you know what I would do? Shut up, listen, take notes, pay attention. Simple. That's why I read a lot of books. Yeah. I didn't want to remain ignorant, right? Deal with your ego. That's huge. As I reflect upon my behavior today, did I ever become irritable over small things? Small-mindedness will destroy you. Try to think bigger. Try to think as an adult, you know, more purposeful, more macro, not micro, not worrying about little things or the things that people can say all kinds of things to me. My wife does, and I've had students say things to me. I I don't pay much attention to it at all. You know, if it's just their opinion and I find it degrading and derogatory and not true, I don't even fight back. You know, I let them have their say. There you go, and then I move along my way. Because oftentimes, you know, if that's the way they feel, you know, you can argue, you can scream back and forth, but it's not productive. It's counterproductive. Be productive. Don't waste your time doing time and energy doing things that are counterproductive. Right? Did I do or say anything irrational to get my way? Did I try to impose my will upon others? Did I ever fail to speak my mind when I felt strongly about something and then later feel resentment? I went through all of these things, and I used to be terrible. I didn't talk. I was not assertive. I didn't say anything. I didn't think much. All I thought was everything that people said about me, or every analysis or insight about me was true. I'm, you know, bad on so many levels, and you know, after a while, that could kill you. I mean, that could drive you insane, or you know, drive you to mental problems, or maybe drive you to committing suicide or something if it gets really dark. You know, and I was there. So don't go that way. I flipped it 180. Major difference. This stuff can make a major difference in your life. Redefine the way you see things. Live in a world both personal and social in which every situation is defined. It is given fundamental meaning. In principle, it lies within your power to make your life much happier. Didn't I just say that? And more fulfilling than it is. Many of the negative definitions we apply to situations in our lives could be, in principle, be transformed into positive, right? As a result, we gain when otherwise we would have lost. We could be happy when we otherwise would have been sad. True. I went from depressed all the time, suicidal thoughts, depressed, dark feelings, the majority of time, majority of my life. And I said at some point, you know, I gotta flip the switch. I gotta start changing things. And the mindset here, being expressed in this text, is a big part of what I did and used to overcome that deficiency, inefficiency. We can be fulfilled when otherwise we would have been frustrated. In this game plan, we practice redefining the way we see things, turning negatives into positives, dead ends into new beginnings, mistakes into opportunities. So good. This is beyond excellent. This is some of the best advice, information, and knowledge you can gain. Get in touch with your emotions. There's IQ and EQ. What's your EQ? What's your emotional quotient? A lot of people aren't aware of that. They don't work on it. They're constantly and continuously out of control emotions, which again could cause, I'm going to say will cause, over a long enough period of time, problems. Deficiencies, inefficiencies in your life, depression. And again, it could cause you to go off the deep end. and want to take your own life. These things are some of the things that lead us to really bad life, bad lives, bad decisions, uh, and ultimate bad decisions, right? Whenever you feel some negative emotions, just systematically ask yourself, what exactly is the thinking that leads to this emotion? How might this thinking be flawed? What am I assuming? Should I be making these assumptions? And I used to have all this dark energy in me, right? It seemed like I couldn't get out from under it, this continuous dark cloud. And I started replacing that dark cloud with light, little little pieces of light, if you will, here and there at a time, right? And moving forward. And now it's pretty much all gone. It's almost all light in there, not dark anymore, light, right? Analyze group influences on your life. That's huge, right? Individual influences, maybe your parents, maybe important people in your life, like friends or parents or relatives or relations or caretakers, whomever, right? Closely analyze the behavior that is encouraged and discouraged in the groups to which you belong. For a given group, what are you required or expected to believe? What are you forbidden to do, right? This is groupthink. You're not a group, you're an individual. You can certainly join groups, but don't become, part of the board. You ever see that in Star Trek? Where all these individuals are all thinking exactly alike, like the main board, right? You don't want that. That sounds dangerous. It sounds like it's very related to organizations or groups that cause very dark times in our history, right? So don't do that. Try to, you can join groups and work within the group, but also you want to maintain your independence. It's essential for your mental, physical, financial, emotional, social well-being. Okay. I skipped right over that. Sorry. Go back. Integrating strategies one by one. Oh, I already did that. Uh, okay. You begin to recognize how your behavior is shaped and controlled by group definitions. You begin to see how you and others uncritically, keyword, accept group definitions rather than creating your own definitions, right? What are the definitions embedded in these statements? I'm giving a party. Keyword is highlighted, right? We're going to have a meeting. Why don't you run for election? The funeral is Tuesday. Jack is an acquaintance, not really a friend, right? When you internalize these ideas, you begin to see how important and pervasive social definitions are. When you are more insightful about social definitions, you can redefine situations in ways that run contrary to commonly accepted social definitions. You then see how redefining situations and relationships enables you to get in touch with your emotions. You recognize that the way you define things generates the emotions you feel. When you think you are threatened, you define a situation as threatened. You feel fear. On the other hand, if you define a situation as failure, you might feel the rest. On the other hand, if you define that same situation as a lesson or opportunity, you feel empowered to learn, right? There's a bumper sticker that I've seen, maybe not in recent years, but relatively recent, maybe in the last 5, 10 years, right? No fear, no failure, those types of things. Well, there's always going to be fear and there's always going to be failure. And the more you try to achieve, the harder you try to go, the more failure there's going to be, right? So accept it. You know, sometimes it's really hard. Accept losing. That's tough. The pros do it. Not fun. It's not easy, but they don't break down and belittle themselves or get so down on themselves that they stop participating in life or in the group or in the sport. We're talking about athletes. One of the main ways in which groups control us is by controlling the definitions they allow us to use, right? If you're of a particular political party, if you're of a particular cultural group or religious group, or a business group or academic group, be careful of that. Be careful, right? What is cool? What is dumb? Don't, people will gang up on you and look at you and, try to intimidate you. Don't be intimidated. Stick to your gun. That's the stuff that good lives are made of. As a developing thinker, you begin to decide which groups you allow to influence your thinking and which group influences you reject. You decide who you will work for and who you will not work for, right? And looking for opportunities to integrate them into your thinking and your life. There is, again, use wasted time, handle a problem a day, blah, 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 right? So that's a nice little, I like that. That's a nice little list, right, to keep in mind. I think that's it. So next time we're going to go into self-understanding. So that's a little bit more, kind of a little bit more, working on the self. That's related. This is first 3 chapters. The chapters are about a particular topic or subject. And then usually subsequent chapters, following chapters are in that same area, right? And then maybe chapter 4 or 5 will jump to another concept. So we're dealing with the self. You had those characteristics. Remember that list of characteristics we had to define for the self as a good critical thinking. So now, with that as a basis, we'll move on to greater self-understanding in a complex world. All right, so that's it for now. Take care. Talk to you later. Be good.